Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're going to dim the lights, settle into the quiet embrace of the night, and journey back to a time and place you might not expect. Grab your favorite blanket, perhaps a warm drink, and prepare to explore a forgotten corner of history, a story they never taught you in school. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. You are the protagonist in this story, a curious mind drawn to the shadows of the past. Imagine a crisp, late autumn evening in 1888. The gas lamps casting long, dancing shadows across cobbled streets. A gentle fog, thick and cool, begins to roll in from the Thames, muffling the usual clamor of London. You find yourself standing on a street corner in Whitechapel, the air heavy with the scent of coal smoke and damp earth. It's a place bustling with life, yet beneath its surface, a palpable tension simmers. Whispers travel faster than newsprint here, stories of disappearances and unease. And you, with a peculiar sense of intrigue, feel an undeniable pull to understand the silence that follows these whispers. The world around you feels both ancient and alive, a perfect setting for a mystery that history has almost forgotten. Hey there. Tonight, as the world outside quiets, we journey into a peculiar twilight, a specific moment in time where history took a chilling turn. A story often recounted but rarely understood from the ground up. You are there, standing on a bustling London street, the year 1888. A damp chill permeates the air, carrying the faint scent of the river and 1,000 burning hearths. The gaslight flickers, painting the worn cobblestones in hues of orange and shadow. A murmur of voices, the clip-clop of a distant horse, and the occasional chime of a clock tower are your companions. But beneath this mundane symphony, an almost imperceptible unease has begun to settle over the district of Whitechapel. It's a feeling that creeps into the quiet moments, a shiver that isn't quite from the cold. You notice the way people glance over their shoulders a little more often, the way conversations hush when a stranger passes. There's a story brewing here, woven into the very fabric of the city. And you, a silent observer, are about to step right into its heart. The mystery isn't just in the facts. It's in the atmosphere, the unspoken fears, the subtle shifts in the rhythm of everyday life. The damp chill of the London night seems to cling to your coat, heavier now than mere weather. You begin to move, following the direction of the quiet, almost frantic energy in the street. The sense of anonymity you initially sought now feels like a shield, necessary, but fragile. This area, usually a hive of activity, possesses a peculiar hush, as if the city itself is holding its breath. Ahead, a small cluster of people has gathered near the corner of a narrow alleyway, their voices low and urgent. You slow your pace, your senses acutely tuned to the shifting mood. This is not the loud, drunken brawl of a Friday night. This is a deeper, more profound kind of disturbance. As you draw nearer, fragments of hushed conversation reach you. Words like missing, policeman, and the fog. You feel an involuntary tightening in your chest, that deep, intuitive sense that you are witnessing the very moment a community realizes its world is about to change, irrevocably. The truth, in this history they never taught you, often begins not with a scream, but with a terrifying, shared silence. You stop short of the crowd, electing to observe from the peripheral shadows. The details, are often found in the margins. The crowd, mostly working-class men and women, is clearly agitated, but their fear is restrained, almost internalized. They are looking not at each other, but into the mouth of a particularly dark passage, a cut-through between two towering brick tenements. A uniformed police constable is now speaking, in hushed tones, to a woman whose face is etched with worry, her shawl pulled tightly around her. You note the constable's tense jaw and the weariness in his eyes. This is not routine. An older gentleman nearby, his face ruddy and marked by years of hard work, mutters something about bad luck following the new moon. You realize that what you are witnessing is the birth of the legend. The moment the collective anxiety solidifies into a specific, haunting fear, the atmosphere thickens, becoming a physical presence, a heavy, cold weight settled upon the heart of the city. Survival in this environment, you understand, is about vigilance, about reading the subtle language of the shadows and the silences. A sudden, sharp sound, the slam of a distant door, causes a ripple of nervous energy through the small gathering. The constable straightens, his hand moving reflexively toward his truncheon. He then clears his throat, speaking loudly enough to be heard but keeping his tone deliberately calm. He assures the crowd that they are investigating a simple missing person, an elderly woman who failed to return home. But his eyes tell a different story, carrying a deep-seated apprehension that contradicts his comforting words. You watch as a young boy, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, breaks free from his mother's grasp and points a small, trembling finger down the dark alley. He doesn't speak, but his gesture is profound, a pure, innocent signal of terror. The collective gaze of the crowd snaps to the spot. This is the moment the official narrative falters, giving way to the raw, unspoken knowledge of the street. You feel the gravity of the situation intensify, an unspoken threat expanding beyond the borders of that single alleyway. The constable, after a moment's hesitation, slowly directs his lantern beam into the alley's oppressive darkness. The light struggles to penetrate the gloom, creating more unsettling, dancing shadows than clarity. The boy begins to whimper, and his mother quickly pulls him back, muffling his distress. This is the moment, you recognize, where the story shifts from mere rumor to imminent threat. The official search for a missing person transforms into a wary investigation of something far more sinister. You notice a detail few others seem to. A subtle movement far down the passage, perhaps a small animal. Or perhaps something else. Something that slips just outside the lantern's arc. This subtle observation separates you, the protagonist, from the reacting crowd. Your survival and your understanding of this hidden history rests on your ability to see beyond the immediate fear and focus on the quiet anomalies. This terrifying dance between what is seen and what is only felt is the essence of this historical nightmare. The tension breaks not with a shout, but with the weary sigh of the constable, who slowly lowers his lamp. "Nothing there, folks," he says, his voice rough but firm. "Just shadows playing tricks. Everyone please head home and stay safe." The crowd, momentarily relieved but not truly convinced, begins to disperse slowly, casting lingering, backward glances at the darkened cut-through. The threat, for now, has receded, but the fear remains. a residue in the damp London air. You, however, do not move. Your attention is still fixed on the mouth of the alley. The constable's dismissal felt too swift, too convenient. You recognize the historical pattern, the desire of authority to normalize the horrifying. This place, Whitechapel, operates on its own set of rules, and the truth is often buried beneath layers of expediency and social neglect. You know, with a chilling certainty, that this story is far from over. That subtle movement, that brief flicker of darkness has left an indelible imprint on your mind, demanding further investigation. Once the last of the onlookers and the uniformed constable have disappeared around a distant corner, a profound silence returns to the street. A quiet that is far more unsettling than the earlier noise. The gaslights continue to flicker, their rhythmic hiss the only sound. You cautiously approach the alleyway, the source of the evening's profound unease. You realize the immense risk you are taking, stepping into a space that the police have just declared safe. Yet your curiosity, that deep, historical yearning for the truth, overrides your fear. You pause at the entrance, the air here noticeably colder, heavier, and carrying a faint, metallic scent that you struggled to identify. This is the moment you truly step into the history they never wanted you to find. The statistics of survival in this part of London are grim, highlighting the specific dangers of isolation and darkness. You, with your subtle education and outsider's perspective, are now vulnerable in a way the locals, accustomed to vigilance, might not be. The alley is an open maw, and you are about to step inside. Your eyes, now adjusting to the deep gloom, begin to pick out shapes. The alley is narrow, its walls slick with moisture and grime, smelling of stale refuse and coal dust. You move slowly, one step at a time, your leather soles making only the slightest scuff on the damp stones. You are looking for anything the constable's hurried, nervous sweep might have missed. You scan the base of the walls, looking for scuff marks, dropped items, or any disruption to the natural accumulation of city detritus. You remember the boy's terrified gesture. It wasn't just a sign of fright, but a direction. About 20 feet in, your foot brushes against something small and soft. You freeze, your heart quickening. Bending down slowly, you reach out and retrieve the object. It is a simple cotton handkerchief, slightly damp and tucked into one corner, a delicate, embroidered monogram, a single, elegant script, letter M. It is a detail that doesn't belong here, a small, delicate protest against the overwhelming grittiness of the surroundings. The discovery of the handkerchief M changes everything. It transforms the vague anxiety of a missing person into a concrete, personal mystery. It's a piece of history, small and fragile, that the authorities overlooked. You now know that the danger here is real, and it is intimately linked to someone named M. As you turn the handkerchief over in your mind, you hear a new sound, the distinct, rhythmic scrape of metal on stone, coming from the far end of the alley, where the passage opens out onto another thoroughfare. It is a slow, methodical sound that suggests purposeful movement, not a casual passerby. Your survival instinct, honed by your deep historical knowledge of these shadows, screams at you to retreat. In the brutal world of Victorian true crime, the mortality rate for those who interfere is terrifyingly high. You flatten yourself against the damp brick wall, hoping the deep shadow of an overturned barrel will conceal your presence, holding your breath and listening with every fiber of your being. The rhythmic scraping grows louder, closer, the sound echoing ominously between the high tenement walls. It is a shush-shush sound, heavy and slow. You can now discern a shape emerging from the darkness at the other end, a large, dark mass being slowly dragged along the ground. It is moving towards the alley's center, right where you are hiding. The terror is no longer a distant whisper. It is an immediate, palpable presence just a few yards away. This is the ultimate danger, encountering the author of the chaos, the hidden element in this historical account. You calculate your options. Retreat back the way you came, or wait unseen and learn the truth of what is being dragged. In this history, the survival statistics for observers were negligible. You decide to hold your ground, a final, slow breath filling your lungs, your focus absolute. The object being dragged scrapes closer, and a dark shadow falls across your hiding spot. The unknown is now inches away, and the beginning of your nightmare, the truth behind this forgotten chapter, is about to be revealed. The dragging sound stops abruptly. You are pressed against the cold brick, every muscle tense. The only sound, the frantic hammering of your own heart. The air grows thick with the metallic scent you noticed earlier, stronger now, undeniably foreboding. Then, a voice, low and gravelly, cuts through the silence. A man's voice, speaking to himself in a harsh whisper. You can't make out the words, only the tone. A blend of irritation and weary determination. Slowly, agonizingly, the dark shape is maneuvered around the overturned barrel. Just inches from your face, it is a large, blood-soaked canvas sack, crudely tied shut. The terror is immediate and visceral, confirming your darkest suspicions about the history of this alley. You realize the figure dragging it is working in the open, confident in the cloak of the late hour and the apathy of the city. As the sack scrapes past, you catch a fleeting glimpse of the perpetrator's boots, heavy, expensive leather meticulously polished, completely out of place in this grimy setting. The figure, the carrier of the dark sack, continues his laborious journey out of the alley. The scraping fades, replaced by the silence that feels heavier than before. You count to 60, slowly and deliberately, before allowing yourself the smallest release of breath. The immediate danger has passed, but the horrifying evidence of the canvas sack has left a permanent mark. You push off the wall, your limbs shaking slightly, the adrenaline beginning to crash. You emerge from the alley, not to return home, but to seek answers. That handkerchief, the monogram M, and those polished boots are your only clues. You know now that the person responsible is not a local desperate for money, but someone with means, someone who moves easily between the high society and the lowest depths of Whitechapel. This historical figure, unlike the common perception, is someone who actively masks their true identity with class and privilege. This realization adds a chilling new layer to the legend, demanding a re-examination of all the facts history has accepted. Your research begins immediately, moving to the relative safety of a dusty, gas-lit public library the following morning. The embroidered M is your first target. You spend hours poring over directories, society registries, and newspapers, seeking any notable family or individual whose initial matches the monogram and who would have had access to both Whitechapel and high society. The library's atmosphere, usually a comforting hum of rustling pages, feels charged with secrecy now. You discover a brief article about a wealthy philanthropist, Lord Alistair Mycroft, known for his charity work among the impoverished of the East End. The description of his reserved manner and his family's vast estate aligns perfectly with the expensive, controlled appearance of the boots. This history they never taught you suggests that the mask of respectability is often the most effective disguise. The connection is tenuous, but the juxtaposition of a respected figure with the horrors in the alley is too compelling to ignore.
Lord Alistair Mycroft's name is now the center of your investigation. The key is access. You spend the next few days observing his movements. You stake out his Mayfair townhouse, noting the precise times his carriage arrives and departs, the security measures, and the habits of his small staff. The contrast between the squalor of Whitechapel and the opulence of his residence is jarring, a powerful visual representation of the duality you suspect. You also note a critical detail. Mycroft visits a specific small clinic in Whitechapel twice a week under the guise of medical charity work. This confirms his necessary access to the area and provides the perfect, respectable cover for his late-night activities. The specific dangers of accusing a powerful figure like Mycroft, a man capable of crushing any opposition, are immense. You realize that your next move must be one of absolute stealth and precision, focusing on collecting undeniable proof rather than relying on circumstantial evidence.
You decide the clinic is the weakest link.
That night, under the cover of a dense, swirling fog, you make your way back to Whitechapel. The clinic, a small 2-story building tucked away on a side street, is dark and silent. You know that Mycroft's visits are usually during the day, which means his personal secrets are likely not stored there, but the building still represents a point of access and control. Using a small specialized tool, a detail of your own preparation that history never recorded, you manage to silently slip the lock on the back door. Stepping inside, the air is sterile, smelling of carbolic acid and stale bandages. You move slowly through the dark examination rooms, your senses heightened, until you reach a small locked storage closet in the basement. This is where your true danger lies. Discovering something that confirms your suspicions and seals your fate as a witness. The lock gives way with a soft click. You gently push the door open, revealing a small, windowless room. It's not a medical supply closet. The space is dominated by a sturdy, blood-stained wooden workbench. Hanging neatly on the wall are a collection of frighteningly clean, specialized surgical instruments, glinting wickedly in the faint light. On the bench, you find a leather-bound physician's ledger. This discovery is far more shocking than the handkerchief. It is the concrete, undeniable truth. The ledger, when opened, contains meticulous, chillingly clinical notes detailing procedures that have nothing to do with charity work. The last entry details an appointment for the woman who disappeared, the one the constable dismissed. Your hands shake as you realize the full, horrifying scope of Lord Mycroft's dual life. The survival statistics for those who have stumbled upon secrets of this nature are nearly zero. But now, armed with knowledge, you have a chance.
As you quickly photograph the ledger pages with a small, discreet camera, an anachronistic tool that gives you a vital edge, you hear a sound upstairs, a slow, heavy thud from the ground floor. Mycroft is here. Your heart leaps into your throat. The safety of the dark alley is nothing compared to the imminent threat of discovery here in his lair. You have maybe 30 seconds to escape. Your immediate action must be to secure the ledger, but even that pause is too dangerous. You quickly slip the miniature camera into your coat and slide the heavy ledger back onto the bench, hoping its placement is seamless. You realize that your only chance of survival now lies in the labyrinthine sewers that run beneath the clinic. You spot a bolted metal grate on the floor in the corner, a dark escape route. The shock is instantly replaced by sheer survival-driven adrenaline. You manage to yank the grate open just as the door to the closet begins to creak inward. You slip into the dark opening, the heavy, noxious smell of the sewer assaulting your senses, and pull the grate shut just as a polished boot crosses the threshold above. The timing is impossibly close. You hear the deep, irritated of Mycroft above you, followed by the clatter of him placing a lantern on the workbench. He suspects something. You are now trapped in the filth and darkness, listening to the killer move directly above your head, his presence only inches away. The sewage water is cold and flowing, and the air is thick with methane, a new, specific danger. You begin to move, crawling on your hands and knees through the dark tunnel, praying that the rhythmic sound of the flowing water will mask any noise you make. You crawl for what feels like an hour, the tunnel eventually giving way to a larger, vaulted brick sewer line, allowing you to stand and move faster. The echoing sound of the flowing water and your own movements are now the only sounds. You emerge far from the clinic, near the Thames, exhausted and covered in filth, but alive. The immediate threat is gone, replaced by the profound weight of what you possess, the evidence of the ledger, captured in the camera. This is not just a missing persons case. It is a conspiracy, masked by charity and privilege. You are now the sole witness and holder of the truth against a wealthy, politically protected murderer. You know that Mycroft will soon realize the ledger was examined. Your life, and the course of history, depends entirely on your ability to prove your claims before he finds you. The next morning, you attempt to take the evidence to the local police station. You feel a duty to the forgotten victims. However, the desk sergeant is immediately dismissive, citing the unsubstantiated claims and the fact that the evidence comes from a vagrant, a category you now physically fit after your escape. He is curt, his eyes betraying a hint of suspicion and veiled condescension. He tells you flatly that Lord Mycroft is a respected pillar of the community, and that you should consider yourself fortunate that he is not pressing charges for trespass. You realize with a sickening certainty that the corruption goes deeper than you suspected. Mycroft's influence is widespread, possibly reaching the highest echelons of the police force. The grim survival statistics apply not only to the alley, but to anyone who challenges the social order. You leave the station with the cold realization that the justice system in this history will not save you. You must now become your own investigator, prosecutor, and protector. With the official channels blocked, you turn to the only power left in this era, the press. You seek out the most sensationalist, rabble-rousing newspaper, the kind unafraid of scandal and immune to the pressure of the elite. You arrange a clandestine meeting with a young, eager journalist named Arthur Finney, known for his relentless pursuit of the truth, often at his own peril. You meet him in a dim, noisy pub, far from Mycroft's territory. You show him the camera and the handkerchief. Arthur is immediately hooked, his eyes widening with the intoxicating promise of the story. He understands the massive risk, that this is an untold history that could shatter the reputation of London's elite. You give him copies of the digital evidence, stressing that this is your only insurance. He is now part of the perilous survival statistics, and you are no longer alone in your knowledge. Arthur Finney is a man of action. Within 48 hours, a preliminary story is run in his paper, veiled slightly in innuendo and anonymous sourcing, hinting at a prominent gentleman philanthropist with a macabre double life. The effect is immediate. London society begins to ripple with gossip, and more importantly, the Metropolitan Police are forced to pretend they are opening a new inquiry. You, meanwhile, go into hiding, aware that the danger has escalated exponentially. You move to a small, forgotten boarding house on the fringes of the city, relying on the anonymity of the working-class crowd. You know Mycroft is watching the papers and the police, and his response will be calculated and ruthless. The chilling statistics of retribution against whistleblowers in this corrupt historical period are a constant, terrifying companion.
Mycroft's retaliation is swift. Arthur Finney's newspaper office is raided and searched under the pretext of an unrelated tax investigation, and Arthur himself is briefly detained and warned off the story. The press is silenced. But Mycroft makes a fatal mistake. He sends an intermediary, a rough-looking man in a clean but cheap suit, to offer you a substantial sum of money to confess to lying. The man meets you in a public park, believing you are desperate. You, however, see this as an opportunity. You refuse the money, but your conversation confirms Mycroft's panicked involvement. You see the deep fear in the intermediary's eyes, realizing he is nothing more than a pawn in a terrifying game. You use this meeting to pass a cryptic, coded message back to the now cautious Arthur, a message hinting at the final, missing piece of the puzzle, the location of Mycroft's main archive, not in the clinic, but at his Mayfair estate. You know you have one chance left, one final move to bring this history into the light. It must be tonight. You use the information from the intermediary and your previous surveillance to plan the impossible, breaking into Mycroft's Mayfair Manor. The risk is astronomical. The manor is a fortress, and Mycroft is likely home. But the full truth, the definitive proof that history needs, rests in his personal archives. You return to the high society district, the gaslights here brighter, the silence more profound. You move through the shadows of the wealthy homes, feeling the immense weight of the class divide, the very thing that allowed Mycroft's crimes to flourish. You find a high, dark wall bordering the back of the manor, your entrance point into the heart of the killer's world. You drop silently into the meticulously maintained garden. The house looms before you, vast and silent, an imposing symbol of unaccountable power. You locate a small, unlatched servant's door near the kitchens, a detail you had noted during your surveillance. You slip inside, finding yourself in the dark, cold service corridors. You move with practiced stealth, navigating the labyrinthine halls, guided only by the manor's floor plan you'd mentally constructed. You realize that you are now performing the most dangerous act of all, entering the predator's den while he is likely asleep.
or worse, awake and waiting. You find the library door, massive, oak, and locked. You use your specialized tools to bypass the intricate mechanism, the lock clicking softly, a final nerve-wracking sound before the truth is revealed.
You push the library door open and step inside.
The room is vast, lined with books and smelling of old leather and fine brandy. The single point of light comes from a small, low-burning fire in the hearth. Before you can move, a calm, measured voice speaks from the large leather chair beside the fireplace. "I've been expecting you." Lord Alistair Mycroft rises slowly. He is not panicking. He is composed, dressed in a silk smoking jacket, holding a glass of amber liquid. His face, usually reserved, now holds a chilling, detached amusement, a grin that reveals his cold, intellectual mastery over the situation. He confirms your greatest fear. He knew the ledger was compromised and was waiting. The danger is no longer the risk of discovery, but the direct personal threat of a historical figure who has outsmarted everyone until now. Mycroft does not deny his actions. He speaks with a horrifying pride, detailing his crimes not as acts of violence, but as a chilling historical experiment in social pathology. He explains that his charity work was merely reconnaissance, a means to select victims whom society had already erased, ensuring his survival statistics remained impeccable. He gestures to a massive, hidden safe behind a rotating bookshelf. "The full history is in there," he states. "Complete, detailed, and ready for posterity. My posterity, not yours." He is not worried about your camera. He knows the police won't act. His arrogance is a weapon. He offers you a chilling choice. Join him or disappear.
Mycroft's composure breaks slightly when he sees your absolute refusal. He tosses his drink into the fire, which flares up instantly, illuminating the room in a sharp, angry light. He stands and slowly reaches into the folds of his silk jacket. "A tragic ending for one who seeks the truth," he murmurs. You realize he has been prepared for this final confrontation from the start. He pulls out a small, ornate letter opener, a polished silver dagger. This is the ultimate danger, a one-on-one fight against a cold, intelligent killer. You, however, are not unarmed. You rapidly produce the object you had concealed since the alley, a small, specialized, gas-powered flash lamp, designed for subterranean work. It is not a weapon, but a distraction. You aim it and trigger a blinding flash of light directly into Mycroft's eyes. The blinding flash from the lamp momentarily incapacitates Mycroft. He cries out and stumbles back, clutching his eyes. This is your chance. You move not toward the door, but toward the safe. Knowing you cannot open it immediately, you use a small, heavy piece of decorative metal from the fireplace mantel to smash the delicate lock mechanism of the rotating bookshelf, permanently locking Mycroft's archive away until you can return with the authorities. Mycroft recovers quickly, however, moving based on sound and instinct. He lunges wildly toward your last known position. You duck beneath his swing, the silver blade slicing the air just above your head. The fight is brief, desperate, and entirely focused on escape, not capture. You reach the massive library window. You realize you have no time for locks. With a heave, you kick out the thick glass. The sound, a monumental, deafening crash that shatters the silence of the Mayfair night. Alarms, if they existed in this era, would be ringing now. Mycroft screams your name, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage that confirms your success in truly breaking his composure. You climb through the jagged opening, landing hard on the soft earth of the garden below. You run, not stopping to look back, leaping over the same high wall you used to enter. You have secured the safety of the full archive for a short time, and your camera holds the immediate proof. You are fleeing, but this time, you are carrying victory. The crash of the window and Mycroft's enraged scream finally pierce the sound wall of London's indifference. Several lights flicker on in neighboring townhouses, and a distant police whistle blows. Not for your crimes, but for the breach of an elite man's peace. You use this momentary attention to your advantage, running toward the nearest open thoroughfare, where you know Arthur Finney, your journalist ally, is waiting discreetly. You find him standing near a newspaper stand, feigning interest in the headlines. You sprint past him, shoving the small camera, the physical proof of the ledger, into his hand without breaking stride, simply uttering one word: now. The full weight of the story is now in the hands of the press, outside Mycroft's reach. You continue your flight, ensuring you draw any immediate pursuers away from Arthur. You lead them on a frantic, winding chase through the narrow, twisting streets and back alleys of the city fringe, ultimately disappearing back into the anonymity of the crowded Whitechapel roads. Your strategy is successful. You have lost any immediate tail. You find refuge in a quiet corner of the city, exhales sharply, utterly spent, but finally safe. The danger is not entirely over. Mycroft's power remains, but the evidence is now public. You have successfully introduced the untold history into the historical record. The true danger now shifts to Mycroft, whose survival statistics as a figure of respectability have plummeted to zero. The following day, the story explodes. Arthur Finney, with a photographic evidence from the ledger and the police reports about a dramatic break-in at Lord Mycroft's residence, runs the biggest headline London has ever seen. The veiled language is gone. The paper names Mycroft and details the horrifying contents of the Whitechapel clinic. The sheer weight of the evidence and the shock of a prominent social figure being the perpetrator is enough to override the institutional corruption. The public outrage is immediate and overwhelming. Mycroft's manor is surrounded by police, now forced by public opinion to act decisively. You, the protagonist, are the catalyst who exposed the truth. Lord Alistair Mycroft is taken into custody, the police using the broken window and the public pressure as justification. The subsequent search of his now accessible Mayfair archive, the one you secured, confirms every gruesome detail. Not just the murders, but a detailed account of his methods, his motivations, and his chilling arrogance. The full history of this terrifying figure is now meticulously documented, forever shattering his carefully constructed facade. The story, however, does not mention you. Your role as the initial investigator,
The individual who took on the established power structure remains an untold secret, a detail of history deliberately omitted to ensure your continued safety and anonymity. You have secured the truth for history, but sacrificed your own recognition. You have chosen the fate of the information over the fate of the self. And so, the true history of the Whitechapel horrors is finally recorded, pulled from the shadows not by official decree, but by a solitary figure who risked everything. You, the protagonist, become an anonymous witness to the truth, a ghost in the history books. You proved that in a world where power masks crime, true justice can only be achieved by those willing to descend into the darkness and carry the evidence back into the light. The legend of the killer endures, but now it is framed by the reality of his wealth, his influence, and his ultimate exposure. Your journey ends not in a courtroom or a newspaper headline, but here, in the quiet certainty that you changed the historical record, ensuring that the victims and the facts would never be forgotten. The danger is gone, and the long, terrible chapter of the gaslight murderer is closed. And so, we leave our anonymous investigator in the quiet morning light, the gaslights of London finally giving way to dawn. You, the listener, have journeyed through a terrifying chapter of history they never taught you in school, witnessing the truth of how power, privilege, and institutional indifference can mask the deepest evil. This story, fictionalized for our journey, is rooted in the specific and brutal reality of 1888 Whitechapel. The historical figures, like Lord Mycroft, personify the chilling fact that the real serial killers of that era often moved in plain sight, protected by their social standing. The survival statistics for women in the East End were dire, and for those who dared to challenge the corrupt structures, the risk was nearly absolute. In that age, less than 15% of serious crimes involving prominent figures were ever fully prosecuted, and the mortality rate for whistleblowers approached 90%. Our protagonist's successful, anonymous exposure of the truth, therefore, represents a hard-won victory against staggering odds. The danger wasn't just in the darkness of the alleys, but in the institutional blindness that allowed the darkness to thrive. The true lesson is that history is often written by the powerful, and it is up to us, the curious, to shine a light into the shadows and retrieve the untold stories. Now, as the world outside awakens, it's time to let the tension fade. Let the final, harrowing imagery of the gaslit streets recede. Let me know in the comments what part of this hidden history shocked you the most. Dim the lights. Take a slow, deep breath. And rest easy.